Welcome to A1R Psychic Radio here on Moonstruck TV with Amanda Hall Psychic, all the way from the Gold Coast here in Australia. It's with a very heavy heart this morning that we open the show, and I want to pay full respects to our brothers and sisters across the pond in New Zealand for that terrible tragedy that happened last week with that act of terrorism. It's always a difficult time for people when they face something like this. But I think for us here down under, and, you know, with our, as I said, our brothers and sisters across the pond, we affectionately call New Zealand another state of Australia, that we sort of are a little bit sheltered from that sort of thing from the rest of the world here. So it comes to us as a very, very big shock, and probably more of a shock in some ways because we least expect it here. And then to find out that it was a fellow Australian that caused the tragedy makes it even worse. I think that we just don't think that we produce people like that in our lovely country, as I suppose everybody does in their own country. But when it hits home, it's a little bit more, I suppose, hard hitting. It makes you sort of sit up and take notice. And I've always been of the belief that you live each day as if it's your last day here on earth, because we all never know when our time is, you know, to go home. And it's something that I think reinforces that, you know, we need to really make sure that we tell our loved ones that we love them and have a great day and all those sort of things, just in case. And that's not being pessimistic. I think that's being realistic and living each day to the fullest and enjoying every second that we have here on earth, which is very, very precious with all our loved ones. So it's, you know, it'll be something that'll live in everybody's hearts for a very, very long time. And I think it's amazing to see that their leader is doing such an amazing job of showing compassion and standing with her people and not sitting in judgment, but just being there. And I think a lot of other leaders around the world could take a leaf out of her book in how to act in a situation with dignity and pride in your own country. Anyway, we'll get moving on with the show today. It's interesting, the choice of cards that came out this morning for this week's card of the week, and it's the Seven of Wands. Now, the Seven of Wands is the card of frustration, and I don't think we're just talking about what happened in New Zealand. I think there's a lot of people around the world that are a little bit frustrated, particularly with political things that are going on. It doesn't seem to matter which news I turn on, whether I turn on news here in Australia or the international news, somebody's having a whinge or bringing to the attention of the public a little bit about what's actually happening in their own neck of the woods politically, and nobody seems happy with the choices of what's happening. So I term this card almost the card of politics at the moment. So it's frustration. You are able to overcome your frustrations. If you look closely at the card, you can see that he's standing a little bit higher than the rest of the wands. So he's got one wand in his hand where he's actually sort of seeming as if he's overcoming his frustrations. You are on top of the situation. So for anybody that might be feeling as if they're in a difficult time at the moment in their lives, just be aware that you do have the tools. You are on top of the situation. You will be able to overcome your frustrations very, very soon. So moving on from that, we still are in the Mercury retrograde phase. And for those of you that might be brand new to the show, we have a little mini trip around the universe astrological wise every week as well, where we talk about what's happening astrologically. And we're still in the phase of Mercury retrograde. Now, Mercury's the planet of communication, and that includes all forms of communication, all the modern forms of your text messages, your emojis, your messengers, your social medias, all that sort of stuff. So Mercury can interfere with our communication. It's like people don't have their listening ears on, even though they appear to be being attentive. They're not really listening. Their mind's focused on other things. They're preoccupied. It's not the time to sign a contract unless it's absolutely desperately necessary. It's not the time to ask for the raise, not the time to try and repair your marriage or that difficult relationship that, you know, in the family. It's a time to sort of sit back, take things a little bit slower, look at what you can change in your life, what needs to be released, what needs to be worked on, clear the closet out, do something like that. Don't bring up forms of communication unless they're absolutely necessary. Now, this cycle will go on until the 4th of April or April 4, depending on what part of the world you're in. And I've mentioned previously on the show too that I look at when Mercury first starts to stand still before he actually goes retrograde, and then I look at when Mercury at the other end of the cycle is standing still and when he actually starts to go forward. And that's when I take my dates from. So April 4, wherever you are around the world for Mercury retrograde to finish, it will be an emotional time. It's designed, well, it's not designed, but it's transiting through the sign of Pisces, which means that we've got to bring up a lot of stuff from the past. So don't be surprised if a lot of your dreams, stupid daydreams, things that your mind's wandering off onto places that you haven't seen in 20 or 30 years, it's a part of a clearing out process of being able to remove this from our lives, and it's very important. So this week we're going to be working with the full moon in Libra. Now the full moon, wherever you are around the world, will be the 21st of March or March 21 if you're in the USA. So the full moon in Libra is a time when the moon is full, and it's a time when we sort of empty out the closets of our mind, our emotions, things that are no longer useful to us. But when it's in the sign of Libra, it's asking us to bring everything into a balance. It's asking us to try and have a much broader mind at the way that we approach things that are going on in our lives. It's asking you to be very careful, be very aware of what you're. So be very careful, very aware of that. If you're asking yourself, do I need to be more considerate of my fellow man, of my family members, my co-workers or whatever, then that is exactly what Mercury is asking you to do here. He's asking you to bring things into balance. So the full moon I'm talking about is asking you to bring things into balance with the planet Mercury as it's going retrograde. Now, we actually have the full moon candle here. I've got a range of 36 candles that we have happening weekly. And this is the full moon candle. And it's what I need you to do is write out a little list. Write out a list of 3 things that you want to release and 3 things that you might want to start to bring into your life. So you might end up with more things on the release side and less on the what you're attracting sort of side. But I always look at everything must be in a sort of a balance. If we're going to release something, then we replace it with something else. That, you know, we're emptying something out, we're bringing in something new. So it's a time to sort of let go of those things. And it might just be that you want to let go of the sadness in your life, that you've had a fairly difficult life and you just want to release that out to the universe. There's nothing wrong with putting that on your list this week. So when I work with a full moon, I like to work with 2 days on the approach, so 2 days prior to the full moon, 3 days of the full moon, because the full moon cycle actually goes for 2.5 days, and then 2 days on the decline. So I make it a 7-day cycle. Now, I'd like you to write 2 identical lists, because if you're working with my candles, you'll be working with the full moon candle, and you will also be working with the air sign candle, which is the one that covers Gemini, Libra and Aquarius. So this gives you the 2 different types of candles that we're working with for this particular full moon. So these candles will burn for approximately 100 hours. They have a dual wick system, which I light one side one day and one side the next day. Please never burn a candle by itself unattended. You've got to look at it that you're going to babysit a candle. It is flame after all, it is fire. Never place them under air conditioners, under curtains, things like that. Always keep them out of the reach of children and pets. That's really important. So we write the list, we pop the list underneath the candle, we read it out aloud as we're going to write the candle, put the candle on a coaster, never directly on the furniture, burning between 15 minutes to 2 hours per day, and this will help you intensify your intent, purpose and direction. Now, for those of you that say to me, well, that's terrific, Mena, but I don't have all that sort of room, I need something smaller to work with, we do have a travel kit. This week I've made it up of 2 air sign and 1 full moon candle. You follow the same principles. These candles will burn for up to 15 hours if you keep the wicks trimmed and keep them out of drafts. And these are a good little thing to be taking on your travels, or if you've got a small confined area, or they make a beautiful gift in this gift box. So you can choose any of the 23 choices you have out of our 28 candles. So you get to choose the pack that you personally want. Now, for those of you that don't want to work with a flame, but you still want to work with the candle magic, can I suggest pop down to your local department store or supermarket, pick yourself up a melt warmer. These are electric. You take 2 teaspoons of the soy wax out at the beginning of the week, and place that in the top little tray of your milk warmer. Then you add half a teaspoon per day. Again, same principle as apply. Write out your list, read it out loud, pop it underneath your milk warmer, popping that on the coaster. You can turn this on and you can safely leave this on all day and just switch it off overnight. So this is perfect for in the office or at home. If you don't want to work with the flame of a candle, you just purchase your candles and you use the soy wax for those. So before we wrap up our astrology series, I want to take you to our famous person this week. And our famous female actress this week is a Scorpio. Now, I don't think there'll be a person on the planet that doesn't know this beautiful creature. She's been in so many, many, many films, and I'm really excited to say that she's been crowned 5 times the prettiest woman in the world by People magazine. There's only one pretty woman, and that's the very beautiful Julia Roberts. Now, for most of you, you know the love story of Pretty Woman where, you know, she transforms her life and falls in love with her Prince Charming and they live happily ever after. And it was one of those iconic movies that I think if you didn't go and see it at the movies, you certainly hired it out on and watched it at home, and it became a perennial favourite that every woman on the planet, I think, loves Julia Roberts and sort of could see themselves in that sort of role and sort of meeting their Prince Charming and living happily ever after. But Julia Roberts has starred in many, many, many films over her years, and I think probably one of her most provocative and thought-provoking films that I've ever seen, and it was based on a true story, and it was based on the story of Erin Brockovich's journey and taking on the big guns. You know, she became she was a single mum. She dragged away through college to get a degree in law. She went to fight for the underdog, and she took on cases and fought the big companies that nobody else would take on board. And Julia Roberts played an amazing role in that. And, you know, she really brought Erin Brockovich to life, I think, for many, many people around the world, that they realised that, you know, even the little people have a voice. And I think that was probably one of her most powerful roles. It was interesting when I was doing my research that Julia wanted to start out to be a vet. She had no interest in sort of being an actress or going on stage or anything like that. And it was just that, you know, her career she ended up on stage, and aren't we lucky that she did. But one of her very, very first roles in a movie that I can't even think the name of, that really didn't, you know, make it big in the box office or anything, she played a role where she portrayed a young woman that had been a rape victim. And that was what led to her to act in that movie, that they believed that she was the right person to play Pretty Woman. So isn't that amazing? So we take our hat off to Julia Roberts. So we're going to be taking our very, very first caller, and we're going to be taking our first caller, and it's Michelle in Cork in Ireland. Are you there, Michelle? Hello, Michelle. Well, I'll just keep talking, but it looks like we've lost Michelle for the moment. And so it's interesting. It's always interesting when we look at what's going on around the zodiac. I mean, I could talk for hours upon hours about things that happen astrologically and why they happen. But for most people, it's about knowing your star sign and you know, flicking through a newspaper or a magazine or reading something online that you look up your stars for the day and you say to yourself, oh, well, I like that bit and I don't like the rest of it. So you only believe the bit that you like and you discard the rest of it. And people often ask me, how can that be, Amanda? Well, you've got to appreciate what we're trying to do when we write something like that for the general population. It's dividing the population into the 12 star signs, and it's a very generalised version of however the astrologer looks at writing the sun sign astrology column for whatever the format may be. So it's not particularly an easy thing to do because you're writing it in very sort of general terms, and unless you have a guideline of what is expected for that particular column, it makes it harder. I mean, it's not one of my favourite areas of astrology because to me it's too wishy-washy. I prefer to work with the real detailed stuff. But anyway, we've got Sheila's here now, so Michelle is here now. So hello, Michelle, how are you? Hello, Michelle, all the way from Ireland. How are you, Michelle? We're having wonderful fun with Mercury retrograde today, are we not? This is exactly the sort of thing that Mercury does. You go to take a phone call live on air and all of a sudden poor Michelle's sitting there listening to me say hello, 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 and nothing's happening. So that's a really good example of Mercury playing his little tricks on the lines of communication. He just loves it. And you know, I've been in astrology for close on 40 years now, and it still surprises me that how he's able to get away with this 3 times a year for weeks at a time. And the average population who don't understand about a Mercury retrograde just get very frustrated and think, what on earth is happening? Why aren't people listening? Why is my phone not working? Why is my internet keep going in and out? And it's sort of like nothing that they can do makes the problem any easier. And it's like, wow, why does this happen? And it's nothing that we can do personally, I think, to prevent it. All as we've got to do is we've got to work with it, and we've just got to try and work with the Mercury retrograde the best we can. So we'll now see if Michelle's there from Cork in Ireland. Are you there, Michelle? Hello, Michelle. No, it looks like we'll keep talking about some other areas of life. So for those of you that may be interested in learning tarot, many, many years ago now, I brought out a set of tarot cards called the Simply Tarot set that I feature here on the show each week. And we designed them to be as close as we could to the most popular deck in the world, which is the Rider-Waite deck. So they're called the Simply Tarot deck. You can find them on my website. Becky Yu in Winter Haven is Florida. In Florida. Are you there, Becky Yu? Hello, Becky. We are really having great fun with Mercury today. I can't talk to anybody and take any message, any calls, answer any questions. So we'll go back to talking about the Simply Tarot set. So if you've always wanted to learn tarot, Simply Tarot is the perfect starting place because the cards that we feature on the show each week have a little basic meaning printed on the bottom of the card. Now, what that enables you to do is to learn so much faster. As you can appreciate, with 78 cards in the deck, there's a lot of cards to learn and to understand their energy. And we have what's known as major cards and we have minor cards. And the major cards are the first 22 cards in the deck that are like the nouns in a sentence. So they're very powerful in their own right, and sometimes they can feel quite sort of heavy and have very sort of definite sort of meanings, and it's sort of like they make a statement. And some people sort of feel that, oh, wow, you know, I can feel the power of these cards and I'm not sure that I want to work with them. So let's go back to Becky. Are you there, Becky? Hello, Becky. Hi, Becky. Are you there with us? No, it looks like Mercury's still playing his little tricks. I'm terribly sorry. There's not a lot we can do between all of us trying to, you know, talk to Becky and trying to talk to Michelle, so I'll keep talking about tarot. So the minor arcana are like the adjectives in a sentence. They're the remaining 56 cards, which are taken off the deck of cards that we play with today, that we play snap and fish and poker and canasta and all those sort of things. But they add another 4 court cards to them, where in a normal everyday playing deck of cards, we only have a jack, the queen and the king. In the tarot, we also add a female, we add a page as well. So that gives us 4 court cards, and that's why we have 56 versus 52 cards. So the tarot is something that can help you make informed decisions in your life. The more you work with the tarot, the more they become a natural part of your decision-making process and can help you really understand the direction that your life may be taking. You may not necessarily agree with the cards all the time, but at least it gives you another angle to look at the decision or the situation that's going on in your life that you may not have thought of or were choosing to ignore. And we are all human, and we all like to sort of think that we're in the driver's seat of our own lives and we've got the controls, and we take our lives the direction that we want to. And I believed that for many, many years. And it was only, I suppose, through living and working through my life that I realised that some things are out of our control. So let's hope this time Mercury's not controlling anything. Becky, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Oh, wonderful.
Hello.
How are you, Becky? How can I help you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm great, sweetie. Do you have a question for me to work with?
Well, I did. I just wondered, I've been searching for a long time for a significant other. Is there anything in my cards?
Okay, Becky. Look, I'm sorry that you've been searching a long time, and I'm sure that's very, very frustrating. But the one thing I want to say to you, Becky, is that you've been searching for a long time because you know exactly what you want. And you know exactly what you won't accept in a relationship. And even though that might have led to a sort of a fairly lonely sort of life, at least you haven't just attracted somebody in your life for the sake of having someone. You know, you've set the bar pretty high and there's nothing wrong with that. Having said that, I do think that you're going to actually meet two people this year that are going to sort of really take your fancy. The first one is a man with light eyes, mid-brown hair, and in the beginning, it looks like this person has real potential to sort of like, this looks like it could become a really serious relationship. Now, all I'm going to ask you to do is keep an open mind, because as you sort of get to know this person a little bit better, and it's not going to be just in the first couple of dates, I'm talking about over a couple of months, you start to see, hang on a minute, there's things here that don't quite feel right. You know, you're starting to have some warning bells go off. You're starting to see behavioural changes that you sort of think, oh, I don't know whether I like that. Now, I don't want you to ignore that. I want you to listen to what your instincts are telling you, your gut feelings telling you. Continue on a little bit with an even more open mind. Then if you get to the point that you think this is not right for you, then let it go, because there will be somebody else right behind that within a couple of months that's got brown hair and brown eyes who I think is the one. But right from the very beginning, the second man, there's no question marks. It's like, wow, I'm so pleased I've waited all this time that here's a man that I can just go tick, 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 he matches everything on my list. And there's nothing that you want to change about him. You sort of feel very comfortable with him. And more importantly, you feel like you've known him all your life. And that's a good indication of when we attract the right person. So I know that you're going to find complete happiness, and your life is going through a lot of changes, particularly from June onwards this year, Becky. So I'll leave it there, because I'm going to go back to Michelle in Ireland before we wrap up the show. Are you there, Michelle? Hello, Michelle.
Hello. Hello.
Hi, Michelle.
Hello?
Do you have a question for me, sweetie? Yes, I can hear you, darling. Do you have a question for me?
Anything, just anything at all. Anything you can tell me. Finances, maybe?
Okay. Okay, Michelle, let's have a look at your finances. I can see that it's been a stop-start sort of year as far as finances for you. It's sort of like I can't seem to get a flow on yet. They're showing me from about the end of April that the finances start to flow a little bit easier for you this year. Has it also been that there's been a number of emotional issues that you've had to sort of work through in the early part of this year and the late part of last year, Michelle?
Yes, there has been.
Yeah. Yeah, that's almost coming to an end too. It's sort of like as that draws to a close and we sort of feel more in control of that, it's like the finances stay on the same line with it, like finances improve as well. So I feel from the end of April, I think there's more money flowing through the door. You feel back as more in control in every area of your life. But more importantly, I think you're at peace with everything. And I think that's the important thing, because it was almost like the last couple of years, I never felt that I had peace in my tummy. And now that you've got that, it's a good thing. It's sort of worth its weight in gold. But I also sort of feel your own natural intuition, your own psychic ability is starting to really develop at a very rapid pace. And by that, I mean you're starting to get very strong feelings. It's like you know things before you've got the definite answer and you think, well, how did I know that? It's because your own natural intuition is building. And I want you to just work with that. Don't be frightened by it. If you think, well, that can't be, just write it down on a piece of paper and the date and how you felt and put it away. And then, when that event happens or that situation happens, go back to it and then you'll know then, wow, that was right. So that will help sort of build that. But I think your finances are certainly well and truly going to be under control this year. And I also sort of feel that there could be a move or some changes to where you're living in the later half of this year. There seems to be some big decisions from about October around the place of abode. So would it be just sort of making some changes to the place, or are you actually thinking of moving?
No, I'm not. I'm not just moving at all.
Okay, but I just know that there's change there then, whether that's because you've got extra money and you can, do a few more things around the place that you're living, and that makes it even more pleasant for you. But certainly it's a good year for you. And I just sort of want to say to you, just follow your hunches. They're really not wrong. They're helping you get your life moving faster in a very, very sort of definite way. And that's what you need to be focusing on, Michelle. So we do apologise here at A1R Psychic Radio on Moonstruck TV for all the technical hiccups that we've had thanks to Mercury today on the show. So hopefully next week we won't have so many technical hiccups as Mercury starts to sort of get closer to going direct again. And again, I want to say, keep everybody in your prayers and in your thoughts in New Zealand, where our hearts really do go out to them for the massacre that happened there last week. I mean, we've got lots of weather events happening around the world, and I know there's lots of people going through lots of things everywhere else too. So maybe it's a good week for all of us to just hold everybody in our prayers and our thoughts and smile and just try and be happy and sort of radiate a positive energy around the globe to help everybody sort of overcome whatever they might be going through. So until next week, have a great week. Bye for now.